Hey folks, it's Aspen here, back with another exciting episode of our Forestry Talks podcast, here for our special series in the forest capital of Canada this year, the Mackenzie region. I'm so pleased to be joined by John Thurston, the president and a forestry educator at the Northern Lights Forest Education Society, and Gale Hayday, the vice president and forestry educator as well of the Northern Lights Forest Education Society. And Gale, you're also president of another group as well?
There's the Hungry Bend Sandhills Wilderness Society that I'm the president of, and we are interested in the conservation and education and traditional use of a very special area that we have up here, which is a lovely patch of sandhills to the east of High Level. And so I'm part of that group as well.
Awesome. Well, I am so excited for the conversation that we're going to have today and talking about forestry education. This is a passion of mine as well, as we have our Work Wild forestry education program at AFPA. But I think there's lots of great stuff to talk about. But first and foremost, I really just want to welcome you both to my show. And how are you both doing today?
Doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful day.
You bet.
Yeah.
Hot?
Yeah. Way too hot.
So,
Yeah. And so we're here to talk about forestry education in the Mackenzie region. So John, can you tell me a little bit about what is the Northern Lights Forest Ed Society?
Sure. We were started in 2001. Mm-hmm. At that time, the government felt that there was a need to have people educated about the forest.
Yeah.
And so they established a forest education society in pretty well every community where there was a mill in Alberta. Mm-hmm. They funded us briefly, and then we just pretty went on our own. And through fits and starts, we basically had to keep that society going.
Yeah.
Basically, donations and good support of the local school boards. Right now, as far as I know, only our society and the one in Slave Lake are the still ones that are still surviving. The rest is basically folded just because of a number of different factors, mostly financial.
Yeah.
And so what we've done is been very successful working with the schools, been very supportive, and the communities. We've also, last 2 years ago, got FRIA funding, which allowed us to hire people who can actually do it full time. We were just part-time people kind of with a passion.
A lot of volunteers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a brief history of our society.
Yeah. And I mean, your team does brilliant work. This is a huge region to cover. So there's lots of youth to connect with. How many students do you think that you've worked with over the number of years?
Hundreds, for sure.
They even did a total, I think it was just under 2,000, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Under 2,000?
Like,
wow.
Yeah, per year kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, per year?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's huge.
Yeah. So basically, and that means taking kids out into the forest.
Yeah.
Because most students, particularly elementary, are very fearful of it, whether it's the mosquitoes
Okay.
or fear of wildlife or worried about the spiders out there or the cobwebs. There's a whole bunch of things that little kids have phobias over. So we really focus on trying to get them comfortable in that area and build on it year after year after year. If they're comfortable, then let's do a little bit more. Let's just go snowshoeing in the wintertime, cross-country skiing. Let's put them in some canoes.
Yeah.
And we basically show there's a lot to it. Once you get past that fear of unknown, the forest beckons.
So you're working with students all the way up from like kindergarten all the way to high school?
That's right.
Fantastic.
You bet.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Most of the program has, in the last few years, has focused on grade 4 and 6. Mm-hmm. And then once we got the FRIA funding, we were able to hire full-time forest educators. So that helped us expand. And so we've had either Amber, one of our forest educators, has gone into the classroom a number of times, different grades, and done presentations during the year. And then David came on board as well. And so that's helped us expand the field trip aspect. And so we've managed to hit a lot of different grades and all the way up into high school, which is great because then they get to see the career aspect as well. Whereas with the younger kids, it's a little more focused on the environment and wildlife and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what John was talking about with the kids being fearful to start with, I think that's one of the biggest paybacks for us personally as teachers. When they get off the bus, they're quite shy of the forest. They don't want bushes touching them. There might be a bug, and they ask you questions like, are we going to be lost? And things like that. And then as we hike them through the woods and start to show them things, and they're I would say all of them are very fascinated when you start to show them, look at this rotten log. There's all these ants inside. John's really good at that because he's not afraid of bugs. And then they're not afraid anymore because they're intrigued and they're paying attention and they're discovering things that are largely new to them. A lot of the kids from town, especially, I would say, have a nature deficit. So as we progress through the day and they have more exposure, by the end of the day, they've had a fantastic time and they're very comfortable. We usually play a game in the afternoon where they're running through the forest playing tag and whatnot. They've really expanded their comfort zone dramatically, which is really heartwarming for us because that's kind of what we're looking for. Is we want them to feel like they want to be there and they enjoyed it and they had a great day and they recognize that they had a great day.
So, and also see we're educating the teachers as well.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the teachers would like to go through it, but just don't have the background of it. And so if we work with them and show them how you can actually take a class, which is a kind of an unstructured situation, but there's still a lot of learning going on, and also lends to students who are uncomfortable in classrooms, but give them some space and some physical activity, they shine.
Yeah.
So it's a lovely area for people just to come out, experience, and adults, kids, all can get some learning and growth out of it as well.
That is so awesome. And so many connection points to the community.
For sure.
I think it's such a unique model that you have here where you're working with students all the way up, from kindergarten to high school and then working with the teachers as well.
Yeah.
That must be really rewarding to be able to kind of build on that knowledge continuously throughout their years. What is, some of maybe the big takeaways that you hear from the students when they get to be part of your programming?
I have one. A little girl, we were on our hike in the morning and she said, I had no idea there was so much nature out here. So there's lots of neat things that they come up with. And then at the end of the day, when they get on the bus, we usually get on the bus with them and ask, just for a show of hands, how their day was. If it was kind of challenging or was it a big adventure? Was there anything new? Something they'd never tried before. And then we ask them to vote just with a show of hands. Like a 1 is, well, it wasn't that great. Maybe I fell down and scraped my knee or whatever. And a 5 would be, it was terrific. And most kids will put both hands up and give us a 10 and they want to come back. And so I mean, that's our most valuable feedback right there, I think. And that also the teachers have been really on board with booking us. Like we are fully booked from all through May and June.
Awesome.
With field trips. So that's from the local school division and even some of the homeschoolers and private schools and things are
First Nations as well.
First Nations as well. It's I feel like it's a really big impact, and as educators, that's what keeps us going. That's what drives us. Is that we see that it was a really long and exhausting day, but it was excellent in what the results were.
Yeah, sure. I can remember we go out there, usually we walk the area first of all for safety purposes, also just see if there's interesting things we should be finding. And on one particular day, I found a woodpecker's nest in the tree, and the babies were still in there.
Oh, yeah.
And so I made arrangement for the group I was with. We stopped for a water break at the bottom of this tree. I didn't tell them anything about what was above. And so all of a sudden, a bird flies up and he says, look at that. And then the bird sits outside and all the little birds inside are peeping away and he feeds it. And one of the boys said, that's like a Walt Disney nature movie. So just little, things like that.
That's what just keeps you going.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Like I've been teaching, for about 40 years. And so I've got kids who come up to me and say, Mr. Thurston, how old are you really? And so I said, when I got out of bed this morning, I felt like I was about 80 years old. But now with you guys, I'm probably about 35 right now.
Yeah.
It just recharges you. It just keeps you going.
Absolutely.
So we feed off each other.
Yeah.
So it's a whole, and also the thing is we're learning as we're going. We have people come with us and they'll teach us things that we don't know. So that is part of the package that we'd like to develop and keep on growing for other people as well.
Absolutely. So John, is that what you would say kind of keeps you going and keeps you really engaged and passionate about forestry education?
Oh,
over the
definitely.
years? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. When I was young, I was not a good student either. And I was the kid in the back of the room who just basically daydreamed out the window because that's all I wanted to be was outside.
Yeah.
So when I got into teaching, I wanted to basically give kids that opportunity, like me, who had no interest in what the teacher was saying on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
But I want to get out there and let's turn it like outdoor into a classroom.
And
so that's what I want to do.
Yeah. Wasn't that always the best day in class when your teacher said, oh, you know what, kids, we've got an outside day, whatever it was, even if you were doing math outside.
Absolutely.
That was the best day of the year.
Oh, for sure.
So, and you offer something, even more, right? That next level. It's not just being outside of the school, but you get to kind of go walk around. I'm hearing there's like canoe trips, doing trail walks. What does kind of a typical day of outdoor programming look like for you?
It depends what time of the year.
Yeah.
And who you're working with. In the wintertime, we did quite a bit of work with junior high on survival.
Okay. Wow.
Snowshoeing.
Some skiing.
Some skiing, fire making, shelter building. With high school, it's been canoeing.
Yeah.
With the elementary, it's basically taking them outside and doing nature walks. In the afternoon, it'll be a game. The grade sixes play a game where they actually are playing the roles of a food pyramid. And basically in the food pyramid, we tell them that we've got the herbivores, omnivores, carnivores, and each one of you will have a chance to pick an animal and you'll be part of this game. And you'll hunt each other while you're out there.
Oh, gosh.
And
They love it.
They love it. They absolutely love it.
It can be vicious. No,
Yeah. And so they have life tags around, and basically it's a fancy game of tag. And so they're running around, and they're tagging each other. The teacher gets in the game at the end, but the teacher plays by different rules.
Oh, okay.
Because the teacher has technology. So instead of having to tag somebody, all she needs to do or he needs to do is call their name, because technically it could be a bow and arrow that they're using.
Right.
Or a gun.
Yeah.
They don't need to be running around and chasing each other. They can just sit and take pot shots at each other.
And just pick off
Oh, yeah. And so the teachers,
whoever was bad that day.
Oh, yeah. And so the teachers take it on. It's fun. Holy smokes. And so that'd be a typical day in May and June.
Yeah.
So we're busy pretty well every month. We did Christmas third count.
Right.
At Christmas, I had people from community counting birds. We just started a plant watch, looking at the first blooming of various species of flowers to see how climate change is affecting the blooming of flowers. So anything to do with the outdoors and the forest will go on. And you might have an idea that we want to build on too from your experience as well. So we're gleaning everything we can use just to make the program more successful and more fun.
Brilliant. And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing for some of these different watches and counts, those are broader community events, not just for students.
Definitely national.
Yeah.
That's one of our objectives currently. For one thing, we're building the programming with students, but then also to engage with the broader community more and more and have different events. We've participated with snowshoeing at the Winter Carnival in High Level and those kinds of things where, we actually borrow the snowshoes from the school division. So there's another connection, and then put it out there for the public to have a try and see if you like it. And then that's a chance for us to say, hey, well, there's trails out at Putin or out at Machisis Lake or wherever. And, some people have never had a chance to put snowshoes on. So it gives them an opportunity to try it and have a conversation, and maybe they'll go get their own. And that's what the society is all about, is trying to connect people with the forest.
Yeah.
In any way, through education activities, and then also with the older students, we talk more about careers and connecting with industry that way. So we're trying to have a very well balanced program in place. So I think we're getting there really, really well,
We are.
and really speeding up in the last couple of years.
It's all possible because of support from the forest industry. The companies up here have been super supportive.
Yeah.
The school boards have, the communities, the First Nations. The support is there. The Métis Association, they're all reaching out for involvement from us, but also the feedback that we get is tremendous. Tremendous.
Yeah, no doubt. And, something that I certainly observe with our program, having industry be involved, not just from a financial standpoint, but being able to work with actually industry professionals is such a good way to show students about what jobs exist. I know we go into a classroom and depending what part of the province you're in, it's like, okay, raise your hand, tell me what jobs you know about in the sector. And it's always like, oh, lumberjack, which isn't really even technically a job. But that's, you know, a lot of people, that's where their knowledge ends. So it's so fabulous they're able to work with the industry a little bit more. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Oh, certainly. First off is that this year we ran a forestry expo, and we invited students from all the high schools to participate for those who were interested in any aspect of forestry. We brought in various companies and agencies that were involved in everything from the helicopter companies to the forest industry itself. And then we ran field trips. So if you wanted to see what goes on in the bush, they actually had a bus went out to a harvesting operation. And they parked and they watched the whole operation of falling a tree, delimbing it, loading up in a logging truck and stuff like that. Then everything was turned off, and then the opportunity for the kids to go and talk to operators and see what it was like to climb in the cab and check things out. We had tours of mills and things like that. And a lot of times we're hoping to get more is have some of the millwrights and the tradespeople come into the classroom. It's something for me to talk about it. There's no trade in that area, but if you have a person who's closer to a grade 12 student in age, who's a millwright and has got experience, brings the tools in and starts talking, you see connections made. And so that's all kind of the like I say, the team that slowly coalescing together to make this all operate.
Absolutely. Gale, you mentioned Machesis Lake earlier. So I had Counselor Lisa Wardley on the show earlier, as you know, and Lisa told me I have to ask John about Machesis Lake. So John, tell me about Machesis Lake and what you were doing out there with students.
Well, first of all, I don't want to take all Gale's thunder because that is her special area. But
is it? Oh, my apologies, Gale.
Oh no, not at all.
Briefly, when I was teaching, I would take students out there for a week at a time, and basically we would camp and we would either mountain bike or we'd hike or ski, whatever it happens to be, and I'd have all kinds of activities for them, and so it was kind of an end of the year opportunity for a grade 6 class to have a great time at the lake, which is a pristine, special place that's really unique in this part of the province. But I'm going to let Gale go beyond that. She's got a lot more to say.
I guess Machesis Lake is special to me because it's in the Sandhills area, and it's just so beautiful. I mean, the whole boreal forest has its own beauty, as I heard Lisa saying earlier. It's true, but in the Sandhills, it's ridge after ridge of sand, and then it's been stabilized by largely by jack pine and other vegetation. So it's beautiful. We have an equestrian campground out there that was built in 2016 with the help of Mackenzie County. And then John was mentioning the field trips, and so Rocky Lane School, where we both taught for many years, had a field trip where the entire elementary portion of the school would go out there. And so we've had a long history of going out there. We used to actually take care of the park as a school. The kids would go and clean up all the garbage every spring. So it's been a real focus of our school time, as well as now our forest education time. We go there a lot. And it's just a really, really special place. It's a campground, but it's kind of a rustic campground, I guess you might call it. So it's still just a beautiful patch of nature, largely untouched, very quiet. There's, you can't hear any traffic or anything from there. Lots of wildlife, and they stock the lake with fish, so people come and fish. We actually had a really neat thing this year. We were there with a field trip. Was that, I think, junior high?
Yeah.
And the big truck came that stocks the fish. And it was just during our lunch break, so it was perfect. And the young fellow that was driving the truck was willing to talk to the kids and showed them the whole thing of how to get the fish into the lake. So again, talking about careers, that was another really good interaction because they got to talk to him, and he was really willing to explain the science behind it. And the kids helped measure the temperature of the water and the pH and this kind of thing. So it's kind of amazing sometimes when we're out there, the connections that we do make just accidentally, just by being there. And people show up and are willing to engage when they see what we're doing and see the value in it. So yeah, it's a pretty neat
too,
space.
is we have a lot of parents sometimes go. So they'll go along with their children as well. So it's a learning opportunity for them as well. Along with their kids and enjoy it as well.
And it can be for us as well, because oftentimes the bus driver or a parent or like the fish delivery person, they have knowledge that we don't have. And so like it's an environment of everyone learning, and often even students will know, have some knowledge and share it with us and the rest of the group. So it's a really positive atmosphere, I find.
Yeah. So. And Gale, you mentioned the equestrian camp earlier. And so I heard that you do a lot of programming on horseback. Is that right?
I do. I volunteer with the Rocky Lane Pony Club, and which is a group that teaches kids horsemanship. And then in 2016, we managed to have the grand opening of the equestrian campground out there. And that was a partnership with several organizations in the area. The Agricultural Society was supportive, and the Pony Club and the county. It was a very big initiative on their part. And then I also volunteer with the Hungry Bend Sandhills Wilderness Society. And so we partnered as the community group, and we went in and scouted the area, checking for, any kind of unique like plants or bird nests or anything like that might be endangered by having a camp. So we chose an area, and it was all approved, and got it constructed with a lot of volunteer support as well. And now we have it's a beautiful equestrian campground, and we actually take students there occasionally too to show them another way of enjoying the forest. The trails out there are largely multi-use, quad, horse, hiking, cycling, are all permitted on the larger trails. I've been in other horse camps, and I think it's one of the nicest ones, just because it's quite remote. There's space between camps. There's pens for the horses. There's water for the horses. It's quite nice.
Can you explain how the society got that long name, Hungry Bed and Sandhills?
Yeah, sure.
Great question, John.
Back when they formed the society in the late 1990s, and I came on board just a little bit after that, they consulted with the older people in the community for what would an appropriate name be. And so the way the Peace River goes right through the Sandhills, and there's a really large bend in the river, and that's not too far from the Machias Lake area. But the Sandhills go all the way to Paddle Prairie, Lacrete, Fort Vermilion, and partway towards High Level. Anyway, so the Peace River makes this big bend, and they said back in the day when people traveled by water, it was such a big bend, it would take so long. By the time you got around that bend, you'd be hungry for your next meal. And so it was named the Hungry Bend. And so because that's right in the middle of the Sandhills, they thought that would be a good name. So that's how.
And also the name Machias is interesting because in talking to an elder at Beaver First Nation, they were saying that it's named after a little orphan boy that was lived with a Habitat family. And this fellow in the summertime would go out there by himself and live out there, made a shelter, hunted and fished, and basically just wanted to get away from people. And his name was, well, I can't remember the beaver name, but it's anglicized as Machias. And so this fellow basically put the place on the map, I guess, in his own private way. And later on, there's a connection with you and your husband.
My husband was born and raised in the area, and as a little boy, so that would have been in about the 1950s, I would say, late 50s. He remembers Machias as an adult man coming and working on the farm for his dad. So it's kind of a neat historical reference for the lake to be named after somebody that also appreciated it like we do.
Exactly.
And so, John, you mentioned earlier that your program gets to do a lot of work with some of the First Nations in the area. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, first it was that I did one day with the Fort Million a Métis Association, a culture camp, which was fantastic. Nature walks, things like that. We worked with the Denadog First Nation. At that time, they had been evacuated because of fire, so they were kind of looking for opportunities. So we came and kind of just ad hoc, kind of just
took them out to Footner Lake and did some hiking.
Many years ago, before I was on the side, I was working with Tall Cree First Nation and developed a outdoor ed program for their school as well. So it's been a passion. When I was interested, I will work with them. We'd like to work with pretty well every community. The trouble is just time and manpower, but now we have 2 full-time people who will probably be reaching out to pretty most communities. Including the Paddle Prairie as well.
Yeah. Awesome. And so, Gale, you were mentioning earlier some of the unique plants in the area, and I figured who better than 2 fabulous educators in the Mackenzie region to share with me a little bit about what makes the Mackenzie region unique.
Well, I would say that it's still largely untouched up here. You can still go not very far out of town, and the forest is not impacted by people overly much. The time I've spent down south, I find it shocking when I go somewhere that I think is a natural area, and there's so much impact, even like into the Wilmore and places like that. There's been so much camping and so much travel in there. To find a lot more garbage and things like that. Whereas here you can go kind of out the back door and canoe the rivers and walk through the bush. And the winter is a fantastic time to be out in the woods. For one thing, the bears are sleeping and there's no bugs. But you put your snowshoes on and off you go, exploring anywhere. There's, the Crown land is very accessible. And there's a number of trail systems that are available too if you have that, if you're more interested in that. We have lots of cross-country skiing, beautiful trails out at Rocky Lane, world class, I would say. And then it's not crowded, we have enough people that we have some really neat opportunities and trails and things. But if you want peace and quiet, there's that too.
Yeah. I can imagine it's a hard sell trying to get people to go outside in one of the most northern parts of the province in the winter, but you make a good case for it.
Well, that's something that we do educationally before we take kids out in the winter. We go into the classroom ahead of time. And we've even brought samples of clothing and things to show them because that's an awareness. We also have noticed in the last number of years, people new to Canada are coming to the north more. And so they don't have the background with winter. Most of them are keen to know, but they just don't have that awareness. So we try and coach them a bit on what to wear to prepare. And that makes a big difference for them.
If I might add something, is it because I'm an avid canoeist, and just the opportunity to put my boat in the water, and within a couple hours you're away from everything. And whether it's going up to the Northwest Territories or going south down to the Wabasca, there's so much opportunities for that. And if you got the resources, just take a float plane or a helicopter, and you're dropping into places that are just wonderful. The fishing is fantastic, and you're not going to find that in other parts of Alberta. We don't have the land mass that they have here. They don't have down there. It's been developed. Here we still have that pristine area. It's been impacted certainly by oil and gas and by forestry, but a lot of it has been reforested by forestry for sure. And you know what? It's amazing how resilient the forest is. If you cut a trail, come back 15, 20 years later, and you can see it, but there's trees taken over. So the forest is always going to be here. And thank heavens for my little part. I'm just enjoying it here because it's basically my life. I just love it.
What have been maybe some of the most memorable moments in your time as an educator?
Briefly, one one of my trips to Machesis Lake, I went with a group of students who were reluctant to go because I always gave them an option if they wanted to travel further in the province, they had to do some fundraising. They were lackluster with fundraising, so I said, let's go to Machesis Lake. And they just groaned and said, that's just our backyard. So I said, let's make some fun of it. So what I did is I took a number of old artifacts from the Rocky Lane School, many historical facts, because Rocky Lane at one time had its own museum. And so 2 weeks before they came out there, I laced the area with artifacts, old guns, traps, and stuff like that. And basically, and to make it very brief, I developed a whole scenario that these kids were going to be going out there and just having a great time. But at the time, there'd been history. One of the first women trappers actually trapped up there in the 1920s. I heard about it and basically scripted the superintendent and my parents. They wrote letters, fake letters, to my students saying, if you're all going out there, could you look out for the signs of this trapper? And so I said, sure. So I raised their interest.
Yeah.
And so then off we went. And so we bicycle, and I always stop at every spot. There was a artifact hidden. And before you know it, they found an old trap. Or there was an old rusty 22, or there was an old pot or something. And we had some Indigenous people camping with us, parents of some of the kids. They built a big, huge teepee. So every night we'd sit around the fire inside this teepee, and we'd pass this whole thing around. And you know what? For kids who had no interest in history, before they've heard a story which was fake, but they start feeling these things, and how was it used, and how long has it been out there? And so bit by bit, we accumulated things like this, and it got to the point where even some of the parents who were coming to visit us started to believe this whole story. So it was getting out of hand. And so towards the end, we found an old cabin, which was not hers, but was, and that we had an old diary that was buried underneath one of the floorboards. It was done in very ancient handwriting, making it look very vintage. All brought in. The kids are ecstatic. We got to go and talk to the CBC. We got to talk to CBC. We got to talk about we found this. And so the next night, the last night before we go, I said, I got to pull this together. I'm going to drop the bomb on this. So I said. So everybody's excited and everything. And I said, guys, it's about 11 o'clock at night. No one wants to sleep. Everybody's hyped up on it. And I said, I haven't been honest with you. What, Mr. T, you haven't been honest? What? You're a teacher. You're always supposed to be honest. No. I made the story up about all these artifacts. I came out there and basically laced it with it because you guys didn't want to come out. I had to make it fun for you. So I get it. You hyped up, and you are hyped up. Oh, some of the kids are crying. They said, you let us down. But, so it was no longer the fun part. But I said, you know what? Let's have a look at two things. One, you had a great time. This week has been a great time for you. If I hadn't done that stuff, you would have said, it's boring around here. I gave you a challenge, and you exceeded it. The second is, you know what? You guys are pretty gullible. You think you're the only ones on those trails. These trails are used by many people. So you think a gun would be sitting there by a tree all this time, no one touching it, and it happened to be just there for you to find? And they said, yeah, I put those there so you could find it. And I said, you know what? As you grow older, you're going to have to start being a little bit more critical in terms of the information you get. Whether it's someone selling you an old car, a beater car, you've got to be able to go in there and say, is this guy telling the truth? Better kick the tires in this thing. Don't be so gullible. Don't believe everything you see, because you know what? As we progress and we get older, there can be times when you have to be critical in terms of who you vote for. Lifestyle you want to choose, the good things and the bad things about that's out there. You could possibly be, is that an option? Let's think about how it's going to affect you. So this is a learning situation for you. So it ended. And even to this day, kids keep on, and they shake their heads. They're in their 40s right now. They kind of said, Thurston, you really did it.
No.
But you should. Too bad it wasn't real. Even in their 40s, they're still.
Well, you left an impact.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's fun.
I can only imagine those poor students who think they are at the forefront of this huge historical discovery. But it sounds like, you know what, at the end of the day, there was still lots of good learning about some of the different tools and
Definitely.
just being outside the nature. So,
for sure.
and you left an impact, you left a mark.
Oh, it's good. It's good indeed.
And speaking of impact, there's been a few teachers that have been on our field trips, and they remember being on your trips when they were in school. Yeah. So that's really neat to see the next generation bringing kids out.
Absolutely. How cool. And that must be so rewarding to be able to see.
It really is.
You know, through generations, the impact.
For sure. Yeah. You know, I offer you an invitation. Next time you're up here, make a day. We'll take you canoeing.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that, John.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
You're more than welcome. This has been fun.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. You know what? Before I let you go, I have to ask, because we are here for the Forest Capital of Canada celebration. Sure. So can you tell me a little bit about the importance of that designation and maybe how that relates to your work in forestry education? Does it elevate or amplify or give you some opportunities?
Oh, definitely.
All of that and more.
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks to Lisa. She's always bringing opportunities like this forward for us. And I think it's been a really neat opportunity for the whole region to spread the information about forestry and what's going on. And not just forestry as an industry, but the forest, because we live surrounded by the forest. It's highly accessible here for us, which is just a blessing. It just helps get more opportunities, more publicity, more awareness, I think, for people. So you were talking before the interview about how once you started to get to know people in the industry, how it had given you a shift. And I have had the same experience with joining the society and doing these field trips with John and getting a chance to meet more people in industry and know them as human beings. It's a much different perspective than when you just see it on the news and you see a logging truck go by and that's your whole impression of forestry. Mm-hmm. But once you start to make those connections, which is what we're trying to do, it does become more personal and more comfortable when you have more knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the Forest Capital of Canada designation is really, particularly among the students, has actually motivated them to appreciate the fact that many of them have parents working in the forest industry.
Yeah.
Who really didn't know very little about it until, discussion is, well, what do your parents do? Well, maybe I should ask to find out. We've got kids who are actually looking at possible employment because the whole sense of the fact that the forestry is here, it's supporting the community, and it's actually giving back as well as the opportunity for employment. It's basically, this is a celebration. That's what it is. It's a celebration of this area and what forestry's done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think what a great note to leave off on. Thank you both so much for joining me. This has been a fabulous conversation, and I so look forward to taking you up on your offer to go on a canoe trip. That sounds like a blast.
And I've enjoyed it. You've been a great hostess.
Oh, thank you, John.
Thanks a lot, Aspen.
Yeah, thanks, Gale.
Take care.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Forestry Talks, a podcast that explores all things forestry in Alberta. If you're curious to learn more, check out our website, albertaforestproducts.ca or loveabforest.ca. I'm your host, Aspen Dietzick, and I'll see you next time.
This series is proudly produced by the team at Road 55. Road 55 creates content that connects. For more information, visit our website at road55.ca.